All right, so I'm gonna do a little bit more with formatting with you guys. I just wouldn't want the videos to get too long. So let's come back here and do a little bit more formatting. Not so much advanced formatting, but a little bit more than we were in the last one. So I'm gonna create, again, another pivot table. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste this. So let's see, we're gonna go to J30 there. And again, I'm just kind of following along with your text. After I paste, again, I'm just going to double click in a different cell so that it's not selected anymore. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and then I'm going to select the table that I'm working on. Let me move myself out of the way. And then my fields open up here. Again, if you want to clear the whole thing, you can go up to Pivot Table Analyze, and again, choose that action button. But sometimes it's just easier just to move things around manually as well. Now for this one, again, you would probably want to rename it. So we'll call this one engagement. Oops. Grades pivot, for instance. And then again, I'm going to follow your text and do some tweaking here. So I'm going to get rid of the engaged rate in this case. And I'm going to replace it with the post field. And I'm going to place engagement grade in my row. So I'm going to break this down a little bit deeper in my row. So here again, because I have a column and a row, whatever is in my sum value fields here is looking at the overall count of posts. And again, you can play around. If you want to see posts and shares, you can see that it'll break it down into both categories, right? Posts and shares for each one. So this is getting a little bit messy here, so I'm going to get rid of shares. But again, you can play around and stack the different fields that you're looking at and see what's helpful. So here again, we're focusing just on posts. My columns are the different sites, and then my rows are the different grades. So I can see, for Facebook, there was 115 posts that have an average grade. For Instagram, I have 122 that had a good grade, and so on. What you're noticing here as well is they're leaving blank cells when it is 0. We can adjust that. So if you want to have zeros in there, we can fix that, and I'll show you that in a minute. But another thing that I want you to notice is that when Excel uses words, they do put them automatically in alphabetical order. So that's why you see average, then excellent, good, poor, very good. So sometimes when they're breaking down, it may not be in an order that you like. So you can change that. And it's very easy to change it. You can just change it by writing over it because Excel recognizes these headers or in these different labels as well from the original data. So maybe I would like poor to be first. If I start typing in poor, it comes up and I can just hit enter and it will adjust accordingly. And then, so we have poor and then we have average, and then I would probably want good next. And then very, oops, and then very good, and then excellent. So I can go ahead and rearrange those as well. Typically, once you rearrange them once, Excel will not make you do it again. It usually will remember that order, if you were using the engagement grade again. But if it doesn't, it's very easy to adjust it and just start typing, and it will, again, you can hit enter and it will just readjust those rows for you. This is a little bit easier to read now, right? Because we're going from poor to excellent. So I can see here, for instance, that my Twitter posts, the engagement grade there is very poor, right? Most of my posts on Twitter are poorly engaged. I have 1 average, whereas Instagram seems to be showing the highest levels of engagement, right? Excellent, very good. Instagram's the only one that got some excellent ratings there for engagement with posts. So it helps to, again, do a little bit more reorganizing and fix some of that there too. All right, a couple other things here that you can play around with at home. So if you go up here, let me just kind of walk you through that again. So I'm back in the pivot table analyze here. If I go to pivot table here where I rename it, I also have options. And this allows me to change some things there as well. So for instance, For empty cells right now, I have it checked off as empty. So I would like to make that a 0 there. So that will input the 0 for those cells. The other thing that you may or may not want to do is right now, the tables are auto-fitted for their column widths so that the columns will adjust depending on the label and how long the word is. But that may make your tables different sizes. So if you don't like that, you can turn that off and then that will fix your table sizes. So if you're doing a presentation and you want your tables to be all the same size, for instance, if you're doing multiple pivot tables, you can turn that off. Or if you want to turn it on, it will adjust the widths accordingly so that, you know, the entire words can be read. So that's something else that you could do there as well. If I go over here to totals and filters, you could turn on and off if you want the grand totals. So if I don't want the grand totals for the rows, I could turn those off. Or if I don't want them for the columns, again, I could turn them off. So see how you have all these grand totals here? You could turn those on and off as you like there. Okay, and again, you can kind of go through and play around with some of these. You can also do things here, like go to alt text. So if you are using, if people are using readers and things like that to make things more accessible, you can put in alternate text here as well, which describes the table, right? So again, this is a very helpful feature as more and more things are becoming accessible for everybody. So if someone has trouble reading tables visually, you can put it in the description here as well. So there's different tools that you can use here. And again, you can kind of play around with it. So notice those zeros went in, and then I got rid of the totals in the columns, you know, so just kind of playing around. If you don't want your widths to keep adjusting, if you want to keep them fixed, again, you could unclick that checkbox and so on there as well. Other things that you can do is you can also talk about design here as well. So if I go to, there's a couple ways you can do it. If you go to the design tab, so one thing to note here is that there are different layouts. So we're defaulted to compact form here. And there's also an outline form and a tabular form. Now, not much is really changing for these particular tables here, but there are different formats that you may find helpful. So I suggest, you know, read in your text about the different layouts and then also play around with your own tables. Sometimes it may be more useful than in other examples where here our tables don't really change too much with the different formats. But you can also change things like colors as well, of course. All right, so I'm in the table here. And let's see, what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and change some things here. So let me move myself out of the way. So you have pivot table analyze. You can do things like the field headers. So those can get turned on and off. So notice how it says column labels and row labels. If you don't want those to be viewed, you can go ahead and turn those on and off there as well. So you can do that piece. You can also go into design and change how it looks, right? So if I would like to use a different style, I can choose some common styles here if I like that instead. I can also click this button, which will expand to more options. So I could do something like this, for instance. I can also click, let's see, let's try this one. I think it looks like this one a little bit better. So I can go in here. I can also click on banded columns or banded rows. So in this case, that will add borders to this table. Again, it really depends on the format that you're trying to show here. And that you're looking at, right? So we can really change this and tweak this. And update that as well. So you can really play around, you know, with your different styles. Let's see, in each of the tables, right? So I kind of encourage you just to go in on your own here. And again, just kind of play around, try some different styles out, see what you like and what you don't like, right? Maybe we like something like this. right? Maybe that looks nicer here. Do I want columns and rows highlighted? Again, the banded columns and rows may change from style to style on what that looks like. So you can try things again if I want to not bold my headers or you know, highlight those row headers, I can switch that stuff around too. You can, of course, you know, change different labels. So if I want to change the count of posts here, I can go in specifically to just that piece. And I can change that name. So I can, you know, label different parts of my table appropriately as well. So there's different ways that we can edit our tables as we've seen and just make them more visually appealing and easier to read too.